So I've been watching Deadpool. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and I'm going back and watching it because I have Deadpool and Wolverine, and I kind of remember the first Deadpool a little bit. The second one I'm gonna watch too because I watched it once long time ago, and I can't remember a lot of it, and so I want to watch those again. Funny thing is, I'm not much into the Marvel movies, but Ryan Reynolds is hilarious and he's so witty. So those movies are they're great. And I collected comics when I was growing up, so I liked Wolverine a lot. And in fact, I still have a few of my comics. I sold most of them a long time ago, but I kept my original 4-part series of Wolverine from 1982. I don't know what those are worth now, but I also have #1 issue of the regular Wolverine series, and then I have a few Batmans. I have a leather-bound book with Dark Knight Returns in it, and Batman Year One. I was into Batman when I collected comic books. I was into Marvel with the comic books, but the movies, there's just so many. I just really can't get into it. I tried to get into the DC Universe ones, and honestly, I really, really tried to like the new Superman they did and Batman versus Superman. I really tried to like those movies, but looking back on them now, what they did with Superman in this new universe they tried to create, I just think he's too dark. And there's just too many plot holes in it. And then I like the look of Ben Affleck's Batman in Batman versus Superman because he looks like Batman in the Dark Knight Returns comic. They actually matched him up very well, but again, it just the overall movie and the overall thing they're trying to do with DC is just so convoluted. But I did like the Batman that they did, the one that they based the Penguin HBO series off of, which I haven't seen, but I like that Batman movie. I think it's really good. The guy, I forget his name now, that plays Batman in that. I like Twilight too, so I like that actor in Twilight. But and I know there's a lot of criticism when people found out he was doing the Batman, but that movie's great. I think it was done very well. But going back to Deadpool, yeah, I'm going to watch those couple of movies, the first two, and then watch Deadpool and Wolverine, just kind of refresh myself. But I just thought, I talk about movies in general. Maybe you think back to the first movie you saw in the cinema or the movie theater. And for me, I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, man, the first one I can remember seeing was Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was probably 5 or 6 and can barely remember it. Now, talking about the Indiana Jones movies, the first 3, I think, I'm not a huge fan, but the first 3, I would say, they're the definitive deal. Kind of like Star Wars. Your first 3 original Star Wars movies, they are the definitive deal, I feel, just like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, Temple of Doom. But out of those 3 movies, I like Temple of Doom the most. That's probably blasphemous to some Indiana Jones fans, but I like the fun in it. I just like the fun in Temple of Doom. I like the whole mystical nature of it. I love that the scenes where they're in the carts on the rails in that chase scene. I always love that scene where that cult leader guy's got the heart in his hands, like Kalima, Kalima. It's just fun. That movie's just fun. Now the second movie I probably remember seeing in movie theaters was Tron. Don't really care about Tron. I've never went back and watched it, but I remember seeing it as a kid. I saw Return of the Jedi when I was like 8 years old, and that left an impression on me. Out of the three original Star Wars movies, I'm not as big into them anymore, and I think they really just took those way too far as well. I couldn't possibly sit down and watch everything they've ever made now of that Star Wars. But out of the three original movies, I really like Return of the Jedi. I thought was probably the best one out of it. I just thought it was really good. Now I don't like what they did when they added stuff into some of those movies. Where was it the end, toward the end of the movie, where Darth Vader throws the Emperor down that shaft? I think in the original, you don't have to have him do anything. I think when they went back and they added in like a Vader going no, no, and I'm like, you really didn't have to do that. Vader, just seeing, you could look, even with the mask with no expression, you knew kind of like what Vader was feeling when he had the Emperor up in the air and he was about to throw him down the shaft. But that movie just had a lot of great things in it. Yeah, think of other ones, like I saw Ghostbusters, the first one, when I was probably 10. And that was a movie I remember I really wanted to go see. I really wanted to see Ghostbusters. Now, looking back on it today, of course, gotta have some coffeeholic here. But looking back on Ghostbusters now, I have the first two on Blu-ray. I don't really care much for the sequels. I saw Afterlife. I thought it was okay. I didn't see the one after that. I think it's Frozen Empire. But the first one is just so good with how you can look back on it and be like, the ghost looks so ridiculously crazy. But it's the humor. The humor in that movie is so great. I love when they're up on the building at the end, they're going to fight Gozer, and Ray, the famous scene, Ray walks up and Gozer's like, "Are you a god?" And Ray's like, "No." And Gozer's like, "Then die." And they almost get pushed off the building when he, I guess, throws his laser beams or lightning or whatever at him. And then I think it's Ernie Hudson's character that's like, "Ray, when somebody asks you if you're a god," or I know I'm not saying it word for word, or I guess a supreme being or whatever, asks you if you're a god, you say yes. That's funny. And then Gozer tells them they're going to dream up the destructor. They're going to think of whatever comes to destroy them. And then again, Ray thinks up this marshmallow guy. So here comes a big marshmallow man to destroy New York City. So there's some funny stuff in that. Slimer. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. There's other movies I probably saw. I'm just thinking of some key ones now. Go up to 1989. I was about 13, 14, and that's when Batman came out with Michael Keaton. And I was excited because at that time I was right in the middle of comic books. So I saw Batman, and I remember thinking at that time how innovative it was. Now looking back on it, it's still a great movie. If you look at it in the context of Tim Burton and how he creates gothic backgrounds, I mean, his Gotham City is really, really cool with how gothic it is, and it's in that gothic setting, gothic world. And for that movie, for that being the first real, I should say, more serious Batman movie, because there was a Batman movie in 1966 with Adam West and Burt Ward, which that's a whole nother story. The original Batman series, I have that series. It's funny. You just have to know when you watch that show, it's meant to be a spoof. And it's really hilarious if you watch for the jokes in it. But they actually made the first Batman movie off that series in 1966. But Batman with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, for what it was a very good first serious attempt at it. But then when you get later on to Heath Ledger's Joker, it's like, wow, wow. I saw that movie in the theater as well. And like I'm sure so many people, I was blown away with how realistic Christopher Nolan did his Batman trilogy. But Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, that Joker he did was just amazing. It was just amazing. But I just try to look at Jack Nicholson's as it just that matched the world that Tim Burton created. Heath Ledger's matched a real life psychopath of probably what we could have of somebody here in the real world. I mean, it was just a lot more realistic in that fashion. Another movie I would say was big that I saw opening, I remember seeing opening weekend, was The Crow. Now, I haven't seen The Crow remake, and to be honest with you, I'm not saying I will never watch it. I'm not going to be like all these people, that's blasphemy to remake The Crow, I'll never watch it. No, I might, but I wasn't impressed by the trailer at all, even though that actor in that movie did a great job in the It remakes, and he's good in John Wick. I think he's the villain in John Wick 4. Love the John Wick movies too. That's another side story. It might have been one of the last movies I've seen in the theaters. I think John Wick 4. But anyway, The Crow. Yeah, I saw Crow, the original Crow, with Brandon Lee on opening weekend. Full packed house of people. That was a memorable experience. That movie, to me, still holds up today. I mean, it's a masterpiece, I believe. It just really still holds up. It's a shame what happened to Brandon Lee in that. I think he would have probably been a big star. He's so charismatic in The Crow. That story was done so well. And they've tried to do sequels off of it before, and it's just that nothing's ever been able to really touch the original movie. But yeah, I saw John Wick 4. It might be the last one I saw because I don't go to the movie theater too often anymore. Sometimes I go if I really want to see a movie. I mean, it's kind of funny. Some people would probably laugh. I did go see the Flash, but I wanted to see Michael Keaton in it. I was fascinated how they were doing that time travel narrative, and it does have some good parts in it. The overall movie, like the other DC movies, is kind of convoluted. But Michael Keaton's part was pretty cool. I actually liked the Supergirl that was in it. I thought she was pretty cool. That's kind of the thing with some of those DC movies. They had cool parts in them, but you can't really stand to go back and watch the overall movies. It's like certain key parts were okay. It's like Suicide Squad. I liked the first Suicide Squad. Now, a lot of people would dispute. Some people love Jared Leto's Joker. I really like it. I thought it was a unique take on it, as well as it was different. It's different than Heath Ledger's. It was different than Jack Nicholson's. He put his own spin on it. And in Suicide Squad, I actually saw that in the movie theater too, but I don't really like the whole movie. It's the best parts to me are the ones with Harley Quinn and Joker together, or Joker. And they didn't have enough of those scenes to me, because to me, his Joker was charismatic when he was on screen. And him and Margot Robbie played Harley Quinn. You know, they were just, I thought they gelled well together. But I'm trying to think, what else have I seen? I saw Elvis in the movie theater. I'm an Elvis fan. You might know that if you've looked at my music playlist. Him and Amy Winehouse, I have the most of any one artist of songs. And Elvis is so hard. They've tried to do made-for-TV movies on him. And I think he's so hard to do because the man was just so unique looking. Such a good looking guy and just striking, plus his talent. and you don't want to just get an impersonator to play him. You might get an impersonator. A lot of impersonators can look a lot like him and sing like him, but they can't act, and that's a problem. Or you get an actor that can't do any of the real, can't do the dancing or any of the singing, and don't look much like him. Now, it's interesting because on the surface, looking at Austin Butler, you wouldn't think, man, can he pull off Elvis? But I was impressed. Now, knowing a lot about Elvis, I actually worked at Graceland in 2001. I worked there when I lived in Memphis for around 6 months. I spent a lot of time at Graceland in that 6 months, a lot of time in the house, a lot of time on the grounds. I got to see rooms nobody else saw. I spent a lot of time around. I actually even got to handle some of Elvis's stuff, like few of his jumpsuits. I got to touch and things, helping archives when I worked there. We wore gloves and things like that, but I actually got to do some cool things like that. So I know a lot about Elvis, and I will say, yes, the Elvis movie painted mostly a glossier picture of his life, but I still think they did a good job. They just left out quite a few things. I mean, they left out his later relationships, and they touched on parts of his addiction issues, his flaws. There's quite a few things left out. Now, of course, a man's life like that, trying to portray somebody's life and trying to portray so many things in it in a 2 to 2.5 hour movie, it's complicated. But I think overall, they did a pretty good job. And I thought Austin Butler, he captured him in a way that I don't know if any other actor has done. So beyond that, I'm trying to think what else I might have saw before Elvis. I can't really think of anything right offhand. I had thought about, and I didn't get to because at this time I would say I probably just didn't have the money to go. I considered going to see Terrifier 3 in the movie theater, and I don't know how many of you are into horror, but I have seen Terrifier 3 at home, and yeah, it's gruesome, very, very gruesome. I like the character of Art the Clown. The thing with horror, I'm not always into horror movies just for gore. I won't watch a horror movie just for, oh, it's got gore. I can deal with the gore if the story's really good. If there's something really cool about the story. Art the Clown, I just think is a great villain. We haven't seen a iconic horror villain in a while, I feel like. And the guy that plays him, he just does a fantastic job there. But it is, talk about, they aim to push the envelope in those movies. But I've never been to a horror movie like that with other people, and I just thought it'd be interesting to be in a room with a bunch of other people, see how they react. I love observing situations like that. I like that sometimes there's just an energy from being in a room with other people with a movie premiere or something like that, or concerts. I've talked about concerts and how it can be really cool. In concerts, there's an energy as well when you're with a bunch of people all feeling the same emotion, and you're feeling that same vibe, and you're all there to feel a certain vibe like that. And that's kind of the experience you're paying for too when you go see a live concert, I feel like, or you're going to a live show, or you're going to a movie theater on a premiere weekend of a movie when there's going to be, some people don't like that, so they don't want to be in the room full of people. And I don't like being around people all the time, but in those situations, sometimes it can be really interesting. I saw It 2 as well in Sweden. That was something that me and my ex went and saw. And that I felt like was a cool experience as well. I had never been to a movie theater in another country, and that was something we did. And I found we went near, it hadn't been out long, so the theater was full of people. And I thought it was very unique to be with a Swedish audience as well and get to have that kind of experience, as well as seeing a concert that we had not planned on seeing at Gröna Lund, the amusement park in Stockholm. On, I believe it's on Djurgården, and we saw Jill Johnson, which is a Swedish singer there. She just happened to be playing, and we decided to watch that concert, and that was a memorable experience. So, as far as movies go, just like I've talked to you all about music, I'm not really boxed into any movie genre either. I like all kinds of stuff. TV genre, I'm not boxed into any one TV thing or movie thing. There are some things I fell out of that I used to really, I guess, be into. Star Wars was one of them. Star Trek. It just got to where some of it got old to me. Will I still watch a Star Trek episode or Star Trek movie here and there? Sure. I mean, sometimes. But they just, I don't know. They kept making so many of them. And I'm one of those that nowadays there's so much stuff being made and so much stuff to see. You only have so much energy and time when you do want to take the time to watch something, because you would just be, that's all you would ever do is fucking watch TV or movies, right? So I kind of fell out of that stuff because there's so much other interesting stuff as well, and you can only spend so much time trying to watch any of it. Like I have Netflix, I have Amazon Prime, my Wi-Fi comes with Peacock. Not a lot is on Peacock that I watch, but sometimes there's true crime stuff on there. I like true crime. That's another thing. So now if we go into true crime, I just watched, I'll give you a comparison here. Richard Ramirez. Netflix did a documentary on Richard Ramirez. It was okay, but what they did was they did it from just the police investigation perspective. And I think the idea was, if I remember something they had said, they didn't want to focus too much on Ramirez. I guess they thought it was disrespectful to do that. And it was all right. But when I watched the Peacock special recently that came out, they did focus on him. And it honestly was much more interesting because they played his audio tapes and played the things that he said, and you can get into the mind more of somebody like that and try. I always think it's fascinating, as many people do. You're trying to figure out, why do these people get into the situations they get into? And if you don't know about Richard Ramirez, it's a Night Stalker from the 80s, if you know anything about true crime. So I've watched those specials. Now Netflix has done the Ted Bundy tapes. I've always been fascinated with Ted Bundy, as many people are, when it comes to true crime. Now, the movie they did with Zac Efron on Bundy, that was very weak. They left so much out of, they almost made Bundy look kind of tame, to be honest with you. And the guy did some horrific things that the movie really kind of just barely touched. That movie they did with Zac Efron on there just barely touched on what he had done. But I'll watch true crime docs. I like horror. I've always liked horror. That's something I've never really steered away from. If you would have told me, I probably wouldn't have watched the Terrifier movies 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I don't know. But now I'm just, I guess, just like working in an adult store where I'm immune to much of the adult content. It just doesn't faze me that much. I would say that it's the same thing with a lot of horror. It just doesn't faze me a lot now that I've seen so much of it. You grow an immunity to stuff. You grow immunity to horror. You can grow an immunity to the gore. You grow an immunity if you've seen a lot of adult content over the time, like Corn, we'll call it, PG for YouTube, then you know that if you've seen a lot of that over time, a lot of times you can kind of build up an immunity to it. But I like, I think about, I have the whole Nightmare on Elm Street series except for the remake. I think it was done in 2010. I tried to watch. It's a movie I watched a couple of times, and I was just like, nah, it just wasn't that good. But I have the original ones with Robert Englund. And with Nightmare on Elm Street, I think it's just hard to remake that movie because of him. Robert Englund just had it depends so much on Freddy's humor and personality. Where I also have all of the Halloweens. I have every one of those. And Halloween, I'll admit there's a couple of entries in that aren't so good, but I really like the character of Michael Myers, like I like Art the Clown. I like Freddy Krueger. But with Michael Myers, you get away with more because you don't see his face, he doesn't speak. You get different actors to play him. So it works a little easier. Friday the 13th, I've watched all of them except for maybe Jason Goes to Hell I may not have seen, and Jason X, but I've seen the other ones and they're okay. There's a couple of them that I thought were decent, but those movies I'm not as big into, so I didn't really get into collecting. I like the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. I have seen every one of those. I don't have them all. I don't own them all. I have the first 4 movies of the original ones that were made up from in the 80s up until like the early 90s. And for a lot of you, if you're a movie buff or anything, you might not know Matthew McConaughey was in, and Renee Zellweger were the two of the main people in Texas Chainsaw 4. It might have been Matthew McConaughey's first movie. I think it was. So that's an interesting thing. Netflix made the last Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and that one was actually pretty gory. But getting out of horror, I mean, I like comedy. I like some superhero movies, though when it comes to like DC, I like the old Supermans with Christopher Reeve. It's what I grew up on. I still think they're the best. Yeah, you can look at the effects and say they're dated, but for the time they were made, they were very good. The first 2 especially were very good. The third one had probably too much comedy. The fourth one definitely bombed. It was made by Canon Films and was made very cheap. It's fun to watch, though. If you like to watch B movies just to see how bad they are, Superman 4, you can even see the cables on him where they didn't paint the cables out, where they're doing some of the flying scenes. And a lot of the movies just don't make any sense. I like Supergirl, that was made in the 80s. That movie is just fun. A lot of people probably think it's just stupid, but it's a fun movie to watch. Sometimes I like to watch those type of movies because that's just it. They're just fun. I like comedy. I mean, I like all kinds of genres. Drama. I mean, I could go on and on with it. And I used to collect tons of movies. I got rid of a bunch of them because it was here comes my heater again, turning on while I'm talking. But I used to collect things over the years. I grew up with my parents, my mom, I would say especially, hoarding things. And for a long time, I had a whole bunch of stuff. And over time, eventually, I became more of a minimalist The same thing with CDs and movies. I have some, but I got rid of a bunch of them because I didn't listen to a lot of stuff half the time, or I grew out of not wanting to hear certain things or watch certain things anymore, or I'd have things I never watched or got around to watching. And now with streaming stuff too, you're trying to mix in. There's just, like I said, so much time in a day, you pick and choose what you want to watch or see. So I'd gotten rid of a lot of things. But anyway, feel free to tell me what movies you like, or if there's something I talked about that you can elaborate on or you want to elaborate on, feel free to. Just thought I'd get on here. I was thinking about earlier when I was watching Deadpool, it's like, I'll just get on and talk about some movies. But anyway, I guess I will talk to y'all later on.